Welcome back to Amit's Leadership Compass. This is episode 4. Each week, I break down one standout podcast to uncover the leadership lessons that generally move the needle. This week, my podcast of the week is the High Performance Podcast with Professor Damien Hughes featuring Billy Billingham. Now, I promise I'm not sponsored by the High Performance Podcast team. It's just coincidental that recently they've featured so much in my podcast of the week. And as I said before, it is one of my favorite podcasts, and actually probably was the podcast that got me into podcasts. So Jake Humphreys and Professor Hughes, if you are watching this, I would love to spend a day with you and watching the pros and the enemies. Anyway, back to the podcast. So Billingham is one of the most decorated soldiers in British military history. A former SAS sergeant major, a bodyguard to Hollywood stars, and now a chief instructor on SOS. Who dares wins. So without further ado, let's dive into my key takeaways from this brilliant episode. The first key takeaway I'd say is about Billy's ability to stay calm in chaos, so controlling yourself first. So from the very beginning of the podcast, Billingham talks about learning to remain calm in the middle of absolute chaos. His path into the military began after a violent turning point in his youth when he was out with his friends and one of them got slashed and there was blood all over the place. And this is where he realized that chaos destroys you unless you control yourself. And that theme actually runs throughout the episode between Professor Hughes and Billingham. Billingham describes how soldiers in the SS train their adrenaline response, not to suppress it, but to channel it. Reason being that when you control your inner state, you control the situation. I really like that. So my second key take was about how leadership is service and not about status. Rank means nothing if you don't serve your team. Billingham emphasised that leadership is about being a shepherd, not the sheep. And he used a great line that it's about keeping the train on the track. So you guide, you protect, you give direction, and you support. That's what leadership's about. You don't have to be the loudest or the most intimidating in the room. You simply have to be reliable. And when things go right, you celebrate the team. And when things go wrong, you stand up and take ownership. That humility and accountability are what gave Billingham the respect he earned in the SAS. And I think it's the same for all leaders. My next key take about ownership and self-reflection. And for me, that's really important skill set or value that you have to have. Billingham makes it clear that if you mess up, own it immediately. No excuses, no blaming circumstances. He constantly speaks about examining his own reactions, attitude, and decisions. That ownership builds trust, and trust is the backbone of leadership, whether it's on a battlefield, in business, or at home. My next key takeaway is one that's quite common within high performers. It's about turning negativity into drive. Billingham talks openly about using negative comments, doubt, or criticism as fuel. He talks about how his father said to him before he joined the SAS that he felt that Billingham wasn't going to be successful. He reflects that he didn't think he meant that. He was using it as a spur to get Billy on track. Throughout his career, Billingham has been surrounded by people who doubted him or expected him to fail. And that's nothing exclusive to Billingham. It's very common to all of us. We've all faced that in our careers, regardless of whatever role we've been in. But instead of feeling defeated, he let it sharpen his focus. And what he says, if you want something bad enough, you've got to have the fight inside you and keep going when everyone else stops. And that's something really I tell my children about as well, that, it's very easy to say, I want this, but where's the fight? Where's that fire in your belly that I do really want this? I'm not just saying it. My actions are speaking louder than my words. And the only way they will is by showing that fight, showing that fire in the belly. The next one is about Billingham's discipline, resilience, and knowing your limits. Billingham's mindset is built on consistency. And again, it's a very similar theme within high performers. And I talked about this last week, that whatever you do, do it properly. Don't be an half a job. Billingham stresses about being hard and flexible, maintaining high standards and adapting when the situation changes. One powerful point he makes is know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and trust the right people to fill the gaps. After all, ego has no place in high performance or true leadership. Trying, failing, adapting, going again, that's the cycle that builds real resilience. So having listened to this wonderful episode, it's very short actually, it's only 30 or so minutes long, but there were so many points that I took away. I kept sending messages whilst I was listening to this in the car, just so I don't forget the really key points on there. But as I reflect on the podcast and my personal leadership journey, the line of control yourself first and control the situation is something I try to embody in business and in life. How you show up sets the tone. If the leader stays composed, everyone else follows. The focus on ownership resonates deeply. We all face moments where things don't go to plan. Billingham's message was that on the chin, no excuses. And that's something I reinforce in my own leadership. When something does go wrong, I always look at myself in the mirror. And that's what I say, look at yourself in the mirror first. And what could I have done differently? Preparation inappropriate. Did I give the right set of instructions? Or was there something that I lacked in my communication? Was the support with my teams sufficient? That's just to name a few. Billingham's approach to ego is also something that stood out. I hate big egos. Managing egos is something I really advocate. As the famous saying goes, that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So recognizing your own strengths is one thing, but also recognizing your weaknesses and empowering others is true leadership. That's how you build a team that actually works together and moves forward together. At the end of the day, no one's ever achieved anything by doing it by themselves. And finally, I'll say from all the brilliant points from this podcast, the one looking at my own journey was the mindset of discipline, doing the small things well, consistently every single day. Consistency leads to habits, changes muscle memory, as they say. And that's something that I'm taking away from this podcast and applying it even more strongly, whether it's in practice, doing regular podcast videos, or in my home life. The standard I set must be the standard I live by. And this morning, I just did that. I couldn't be bothered to do my routine Saturday Peloton bike. I woke up, I could have stayed in bed, but I thought, if I stayed in bed, I'm not going to go back to sleep. Once I'm awake, I'm awake. What am I going to do? I'm going to end up scrolling through social media, just wasting 30 minutes of my life. But instead, I reverted back to the disciplined high performance mentality. And I thought, no, get up, get on the bike, get your exercise. That's exactly what I did. And it was really good. Physically and mentally, I felt so much better. So as I said, in lots of these things, when we do, because we're human, we're not robots, that we do revert back to that high performance mindset. In this case, for me, it was the path of discipline. So thank you for listening. I really would love to hear from you and what lessons from Billy Billingham's mindset stood out to you the most. Please drop your thoughts in the comment section. Your reflection might be exactly what someone wants to hear today. Thank you for joining episode 4, Amit's Leadership Compass. If you found these insights useful, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who could benefit from a leadership boost. Please do make sure you listen to the full episode with Billy Billingham on the High Performance Podcast with Professor Damon Hughes. The link will be in the comment section. Until the next time, stay safe, keep learning, and navigating that leadership compass.